Let's get more now on the G7 reception for Donald Trump in the wake of a peace agreement set to be signed later this week. Barbara Slavin is a distinguished fellow at the Stimson Center, focusing on the Middle East and US-Iran relations. And she joins me now from Washington. Barbara, welcome and thank you for your time. Now, we know that Donald Trump arrived at the G7 amongst traditional allies there with this news that he has signed an electronic form of the peace agreement with Iran. We won't know the full details till the actual signing later, but what are the burning questions for you in these days beforehand?
First of all, it's good to be with you. I have so many questions. All that we really know is that there is an agreement to reopen the Strait of Hormuz to normal traffic. This will take a little while, but the Iranians have agreed to this apparently in return for the U.S. ending its own blockade and for an extension of 60 days in a ceasefire that frankly has looked pretty shaky in the last few weeks. That's all we really know. For the rest, we have to see the document. And there have been leaks, primarily from the Iranian side, that suggest that Iran is going to be handsomely paid for reopening the Strait of Hormuz and perhaps for some concessions on its nuclear program, but no definitive statements about what is in this agreement. The nuclear issues we know are supposed to be part of further negotiations that will follow during the ceasefire period, but again, no specifics.
The timing is very neat, you could say. Trump arrives at the G7 with positive news, of course. It was all in time for his 80th birthday celebrations, the US 250th anniversary. Do you think more concessions might have been made in order to get this perfect timing?
Well, Trump very much wanted it on his birthday, although technically the electronic signing was Monday in Tehran, but Sunday in the United States because of the time difference. But yeah, Trump wanted it for his birthday. I think he also wanted it before the G7 to be able to go and say that he was dealing with a crisis that, of course, he and Israel created. Striking Iran without any prior consultation, frankly, with anyone, including the close allies of the United States. So I think that was important to him. You mentioned the 250th anniversary of the U.S. Declaration of Independence. That is also a factor. Trump promised when this war started that it would be over quickly, and he was wrong. It dragged on, and it has caused an enormous economic crisis for pretty much everyone, but especially countries in the global south that have really been affected by the high oil prices and the prices for fertilizer.
Now, what happens in Lebanon is a big question. Israel opposes the withdrawal of its troops from there. Do you think this deal could force an end to fighting there, or do you think it's going to be more nuanced?
Well, the issue of U.S. relations with Israel is very important. The U.S. and Israel went into this war together, and it was, in effect, a dream of Israeli Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu to get the United States to participate in this kind of war. And it has not turned out, frankly, the way it was presented. There was no regime change. In fact, those in charge in Iran are, if anything, less risk-averse, more aggressive than the people that they replaced. And you mentioned Lebanon. Hezbollah retaliated against Israel on Iran's behalf when the war began, and we've seen terrible clashes. Israel has killed thousands of people in Lebanon, and Hezbollah has killed some Israelis in northern Israel as well. So will Israel abide by this ceasefire is a major question. The Israelis have said they will not withdraw troops from South Lebanon, which means there's always a chance for more violence. Trump has apparently used some rather salty language with Netanyahu behind the scenes, but Netanyahu is running for re-election, and he can't look like he is completely an American poodle. So I'm worried about this blowing up.
As to the Strait of Hormuz reopening, the US says there will be no tolls. Iran seems to suggest otherwise. Do you have any thoughts on what could happen there?
The Iranians will make no concessions without compensation. So they may not charge tolls initially, while they wait to see if they get some of their assets that have been frozen in foreign banks released to them. There has been talk about that. And the Iranians have also spoken of a reconstruction fund of $300 billion that apparently they and the United States are expecting that Iran's Arab neighbors will pay for. So if Iran receives this kind of money, perhaps it won't charge any fees. But if it doesn't, I think it is going to ask for facilitation fees for ships going through the strait. In fact, there's some reporting that they are already charging fees for the small number of ships that are going through.